From the FK series to the EC series, Glorious has covered a lot in terms of shapes that the community has been asking for. We've come full circle with where we started with the original Model O wireless. Where the road leads for new shapes next, only the future will tell. But today, it's round 2 for the Model O wireless, and for Glorious to flex their muscles, while hopefully answering the age-old question, does size really matter? But before we get started, I just wanted to make it clear that this unit was sent out for review by Glorious, but you should know that all opinions here are my own, and this does not affect my review in any way. And if you found this video useful, please consider subscribing, as it allows me to put out more content like this in the future. My name's Aithey, and this is the Model O- wireless from Glorious. Glorious has stayed pretty consistent with their packaging since the Model O wireless days. Upon opening the box, you're presented with the mouse and your wireless dongle, plus the wireless extension cable. Below the extra plastic protector, you'll also find your paracord-like Glorious brand USB-C cable, and some extra paperwork along with manuals. Not much of anything has changed with the sensor being used here from the Model O wireless, and is what Glorious claims as the BAMF sensor. At this point, it's essentially been confirmed that this is a 3370 sensor, so you should know what to expect from it in terms of performance. Even taking a look inside of the mouse, instead of the usual sensor name being etched in, you'll only find the words BAMF etched in its place. Using this mouse alongside my G305, G Pro Wireless X, and Ponage Sim 2, performance feels on par with those from a gameplay perspective. The mouse does use a 2.4 GHz connection though, and the DPI maxes out at 19,000. DPI steps range from 400, 800, 1600, and 3200 by default. DPI steps are indicated by an LED found at the bottom of the mouse. To my knowledge, there's no way to change the polling rate without software, so you'll be playing at 1000 Hz, stock. But for those who want to squeeze every bit of time they can out of wireless play, 500 Hz is a nice balance. Before we dive into the software though, you should know that the software isn't required after you've set up your mouse to your liking. Additionally, the mouse includes some instructions on how to change lighting modes and brightness, all without the software. The software has also mostly remained the same, but has much more functionality since those early days, thankfully. It gives you a decent set of options. In the first tab, you're able to adjust the 8 preset RGB effects, excluding LED off. You can also adjust the rate at which the RGB shifts colors, along with the separate brightness intensities, depending on whether you're playing with wired or wireless. This is really great to see. Moving into the second tab, you're able to change the mouse binds for things like multimedia, macros, shortcuts, or you can disable the buttons completely. Finally, the third tab gives you the option of removing and/or adding DPI steps and adjusting the color of these steps. Additionally, you can also adjust LOD from 1mm to 2mm, along with making adjustments to your debounce time from 0 milliseconds all the way up to 16 milliseconds. Polling rate can also be adjusted from here to 125 Hz, 250 Hz, 500 Hz, and 1000 Hz at the max. Glorious estimates around 71 hours of use with the RGB turned off, and I am able to confirm that you could potentially squeeze even more time out of this mouse using a 500 Hz polling rate, as the 71-hour testing was done by Glorious at 1000 Hz. It's important to note that your battery life will vary heavily based on your RGB settings and brightness. The mouse comes stock at 50% brightness, so you will need to configure it if that's something you're worried about, depending on your usage. Before we get into the buttons, here's a quick sound test. Mouse 1 and Mouse 2 are using what appears to be Kale GM 8.0 switches, rated for 80 million clicks, with an orange Glorious colored dot. Click feel is light, while pre-travel is low, and have medium post-travel. Side buttons are about as thin and feel what you'd expect from the Model O wireless. Pre-travel here is medium, while having low post-travel, and the clicks feel relatively firm and snappy. The scroll wheel feels about as perfect as the last Model D wireless that I had. I'm unsure if this is because Glorious has started to factory lube their scroll wheels, or if this is just the result of new and improved QC. Perhaps a bit of both? We won't really know for sure until these mice get into the consumer's hands, unfortunately. The encoder used here is also an F-switch green encoder. Scroll movement feel about as smooth as you'd expect from previous Glorious mice, with very subtle tactility. The texture of the scroll wheel is still the same here, using rubber with large dips. The shape here is essentially the Model O or the FK2 in a much smaller size. Imagine something like an FK3, a relatively flat shape on the sides, a dip at the middle, and then curve which widen at the lower back, starting near near the sensor hole, the height of the mouse being pretty low and flat, shortening at the back and following the extended base. The coating itself is a smooth matte texture all around, excluding the DPI and side buttons, which are both coated glossy. No significant changes here in regards to the cable and mouse feet. They're pretty decent for stock skates, and the included cable is good enough that you likely won't need to replace it. If this is your first mouse purchase in a while, it'll definitely be great for a stock upgrade. The weight here is around 65 grams and around 68 grams with a bit of cable. The build here feels really strong, no creaking, scroll rattle, or unwanted flex anywhere on the body in places you'd normally experience it. I will say, however, these were my exact initial thoughts with the Model O wireless, and after some time, I did see some QC issues arise in regards to the scroll wheel and side button issues. However, my personal Model O wireless unit is still as perfect as the day I first got it, so my experience has been great since then. I want to make it clear though, that things could change over time, as with any mouse, once we see more of these mice out in the wild, but from what I can tell here right now, everything on my unit feels completely solid. I would expect to see the same great QC changes here as to the Model D wireless, but as always, if you're skeptical, it's never a bad idea to wait and see. Glorious has now finally subtracted the new smaller Model O and D wireless from their roadmap, and while things are rapidly changing in the mouse market with all sorts of wild releases around the corner, I'm hopeful we'll see some really great stuff from Glorious soon. Now it's just a matter of what they decide to do next, either revive an old friend or release something totally unheard of, and I'm here for it. As always, be sure to check out other reviewers so you can get a better idea of what to expect from a product. I appreciate you taking the time to check out my review, and I'll see you in the next one. And if you'd like to support the channel, links will be in the description.